Welcome to r/ProRevenge, where someone wasted $40 and ended up paying back $40,000 for it. But first, don't antagonize your lawyer while you're selling your company. Title is a bit dramatic. The revenge is tame compared to what I have read as a lurker so far. But it is the most satisfactory thing I have done so far, given that this happened outside US, where labor laws are, at best, guidelines. I have left out several details. My apologies for formatting/wording if it's unfamiliar to where you are from. Too long didn't read. Management threatens their lawyer. The lawyer proves why this is not a great idea. I was an in-house lawyer in a multinational company that sold software. I specifically joined this relatively lesser-known company to learn more about compliance. The company was listed on the stock exchange, meaning more compliance work. I highlighted this specifically as one of the reasons for my seeking out a change. I discovered it was filled with senior citizens. Not an age thing, when I joined. Basically a company full of old-timers who are there purely because they are close to the company's owners. As part of the onboarding experience, I had to sit through sermons of how they changed the industry and how they know X. This meant I had 3 different bosses, one senior guy who was the fixer. I'll call him Senior Guy 1 for convenience. No one really knew what he did, but he got a cabin to himself. Another was an ex-senior management guy who got a gig from the owner to negotiate tech contracts, Senior Guy 2. I highlight this because this ex-senior management guy asked me, "What's AEULA?" Another was my reporting manager, with whom I was expected to work on a day-to-day basis. Senior Guy 3. 1 month after joining, I was told that the company was going private through a sale to another entity. I was shocked. But I had loans to pay, so I continued. For some reason, I was senior enough for them to handle this independently. This meant I worked through nights to complete tasks that a law firm would ordinarily do. I also worked on the definitive agreement that was in use for the company to be sold. This will become important later. By the 3rd month, I had decided the role wasn't what was advertised, and that I was essentially cheap labor for M&A. Buyers were from another city and planned to have their office there. I was not keen on moving. I read between the lines and started lining up interviews. Things went south quickly. Old-timers were unhappy that I was looking for a job because that would mean they are answerable to owners or worse, have to do the work themselves. Cue the harassment, which really solidified my resolve to leave. All my complaints about Senior Guy 1 and 2 to Senior Guy 3 were met with typical management talk. He sympathized and badmouthed them for burdening the company that he tolerates only because they are closer to the owner. Senior Guy 2 started countering all my remarks/comments on drafting on email. Even minor agreement points required discussion. If it was his mistake, then we had a call. If not, then he made sure to document it. If I raised a point, I was being rigid. However, if Senior Guy 2 raised the point, it suddenly made commercial sense. Edit, clarified some obvious thought fart of a sentence here. This wasn't my first rodeo. I really didn't care about proving a point because I wanted out as soon as possible. Any pushback fights are going to be on deaf ears because, from where I am, labor laws are, at best, recommendations unless you're unionized. The only option is to leave. I was pissed and tired of being pushed over, but I wondered if it was just me angry at the whole situation and finding faults. I had an opportunity to test my theory. So, in one of the contracts that we were drafting, I made some comments and sent them to Senior Guy 2. As expected, he countered with verbal suggestions on the phone, which didn't make sense obviously. However, because he is a senior, I had to do the song and dance to explain the points. So I arranged for the call, explained to him and documented this on email, attributing each verbal recommendation, time of the call, and the decisions suggested by him. Then I sent this back to him for approval. However, this time, I CC'd my boss Senior Guy 3 and asked for his approval on recommendations. Surprisingly, this practice was entirely new to them. Both of them were pissed at me. Senior Guy 2 and 3 were not happy. Senior Guy 2 was being questioned for the first time on email, and Senior Guy 3 couldn't ignore my email as the head of my department. Unsurprisingly, I got a single line non-answer from Senior Guy 3 basically asking me to discuss this with Senior Guy 2, followed by a verbally heated instruction to just do what Senior Guy 2 wants and not bother him. Now I was sure that this wasn't going to work for me in the short term or the long term. So I resigned and gave my notice period of 1 month, since I was on probation. Senior Guy 3 was pissed because he thought the notice period was for 3 months and the sale of company was expected to close in 1 to 2 months. Cue the 1-month harassment that typically follows in any toxic work environment after you resign. On the last working day, I walked up to Senior Guy 3's cabin and did the obligatory thank you communication. He basically told me that I am picking a huge fight and he will see that I never get employed in the industry again. He also told me that he is not going to pay me my full and final settlement of dues and a relieving letter, a huge deal in India to get to your next job. Employers hold off on these as blackmail for troublesome employees. His tone implied that there is very little I could do because they were all senior guys and they'd been there done that. I wasn't the first disgruntled employee for him. I said my goodbyes. I got IT to confirm that I have returned the company assets and CC'd my personal email. However, I was pissed as well at the whole ordeal and had made up my mind not to show this on my CV. Revenge starts here. I call it my 1-2 shot. Shot 1, once I left, I spoke with my friend and decided to serve a legal notice, detailing the ordeal and treatment meted out to me. Ordinarily, the legal notice barely makes a difference as the management is usually thick-skinned about it. However, the legal notice was also sent to the owners, not just the company. This wasn't really required but I did it anyways. Turns out many directors were pissed at Senior Guy 1, 2 and 3 but were quiet just waiting to sell this company out. My act of involving the owners meant the entire board, including outside directors, mandatory for listed entities. This turned into an festival of explanations by all three in front of the owners. From what I hear, they all had to personally take leave to meet the owners, as shareholders, and explain themselves as naughty kids. Needless to say, everyone in the company was talking about it. I waited for 1 month to see if the notice had any effect aside from them being chastised like kids. Expectedly, I got no response but I knew from grapevine that they now had to spend on a law firm to reply to me because shareholders were aware of this information. I had made my point but now I wanted more. I really didn't want to drag it because I was also looking for jobs and had loans to pay. However, their template management response, this time with HR copied, basically implied that since I had left, without notice, they were evaluating all options, including considering me AWOL. Senior Guy 2 basically threatened me that he will not pay me my dues or my relieving letter, evidencing service, and implied that there is very little I can do about it. Petty that I am, I made plans to get both. Shot 2, since I had access to the definitive agreement, and remembered huge details about it, having worked with law firms through the agreement in detail. 1. I was aware of who stays/goes. I made sure to speak to those who were going to be let go. Cue mass resignations and missed deadlines. 2. I knew the specific approvals that would trigger because of the transaction. So I spoke to the authority who would approve this transaction as a disgruntled employee. The authority made their own inquiries. The owners got spooked. It was definitely not serious enough to scare them into thinking that the deal won't get approved. But the mere fact that a government authority was calling them meant they now had to deal with the authority, which would have never happened if it wasn't for me. Result: 1. Buyer used this as a low-value bargaining chip, citing bad employee experience and resignation of several key members on key projects. 2. I got my dues and relieving letter, evidencing service, within 48 hours of shot 2. 3. Company got gossip for years on how the management was dumb enough to mess with a lawyer, including a sermon from owners on how to not piss off employees when they are trying to sell the company. 4. Senior Guy 1 and 2 were left red-faced but survived because of old ties. However, their contracts were not renewed. 5. Senior Guy 3, who threatened me, became a consultant after the company was sold. Story 2. Deliberately deplete my prepaid phone balance? You will pay for it 1,000 times over. I went to middle school in the early 2010s, right before smartphones really took off. I got my first phone right before starting 6th grade, it was a slide phone with a pay-as-you-go plan that cost 10 cents per minute for calls and per text message sent or received. Worse yet, sending or receiving photos cost 25 cents each. It was very expensive, and my parents only gave me $100 a year for this. If I exceeded the amount, I had to cover the rest with my limited birthday and Christmas money I had. Fortunately, most of my friends were good about helping me preserve the balance. They would call and I'd let the call drop but immediately call back on a landline so it wouldn't count as a call, and they'd email me or message me on Skype for most things. Everything was good until Derek joined the group in 7th grade. At first we thought he was funny, but we quickly got fed up with him as he was very unpleasant and exhibited many antisocial behaviors. He started drama within the friend group and also caused issues between us and other kids outside of the group. He was manipulative and always played the victim when others rightfully called him out on his crap, and he knew how to charm parents, so getting rid of him was easier said than done. He was the one friend who didn't respect my phone situation. He very frequently texted me dumb memes, even though I told him multiple times to just email or Skype them to me instead since picture text messages cost 25 cents each. Unfortunately, blocking phone numbers was a feature that was unavailable for this pay-as-you-go plan, so there was nothing I could do as he spammed my phone. One day he got mad at me for some reason and spammed my phone with memes. He must have sent me over 100 lolcats over text. He kept sending them until I lost service since my phone balance was depleted. I had lost the $40 remaining in my account as a result. I was extremely pissed and demanded that he pay me the $40 he had cost me, and he refused and said it wasn't his problem. I got home from school really upset and told my dad about the situation, expecting him to go and tear Derek's mother a new one and demand the money, but my dad said that it wasn't worth the battle. I even asked him about a small claims court, but he said that not all battles are worth fighting, and that the effort wasn't worth $40. He took me to the carrier store and loaded $50 onto the phone. The carrier changed my phone number, and they managed to block Derek's number. They had initially said that blocking phone numbers wasn't possible with this plan, but my dad insisted and would not leave the store until they did it. I was extremely paranoid about my phone number being leaked and other kids spamming it to mess with me. Fortunately, my parents got iPhones that summer and got me one too, and the new family plan had an unlimited text plan. Nonetheless, I was pissed at the $40 he essentially stole from me out of malice. Fortunately, not too long after, there was a big blowout between Derek and the rest of the friend group at the end of the school year, and we permanently kicked him out of the group. He was an outcast the following year in 8th grade, nobody was tolerating his crap anymore, and he changed schools the year after and we never heard from him again. Fast forward to a few years ago, I was back home for a few months between graduating college and starting a new job on the other side of the country. I went out to some garage sales one Saturday morning and I ended up at Derek's house. I recognized his mother, but I don't think she recognized me. I guess glasses and a beard is all you need. I noticed some Pokemon napkins out for sale, and when I picked them up to look at them, Derek's mom said that her son had been obsessed with Pokemon for his whole life and that she was tired of Pokemon stuff occupying her home for so many years. I said that these napkins were for my younger cousin who is really into Pokemon, and asked if she had any more Pokemon stuff. She said she didn't know people were still into that and that there were a few boxes in the attic with her son's old stuff. She actually took me inside the house, which I never imagined I'd set foot inside ever again, and let me climb up the attic ladder and take down several large boxes to look through. The first one had Christmas ornaments in it and other junk, but I freaked out inside when she opened a box jam-packed with Pokemon video games in the original boxes, though I kept my cool on the outside. The whole reason I had agreed to go inside in the first place was because I was holding out hope of this exact scenario happening. See, I knew Derek was obsessed with Pokemon. Our friend group liked Pokemon back in the day even when other kids thought it wasn't cool, but Derek was on a whole different level. He bragged about his Pokemon collection all the time. At the time he had every single main series game in the original box, and in mint condition, as he always had to add in. I went to his house once and he was showing me his collection. He yelled at me for touching one of the games. Nobody was allowed to touch them except him. He had many older Nintendo games in excellent condition, but Pokemon was his favorite. He had had a couple of incidents with his mom damaging or throwing away his things. It wasn't out of malice but just ignorance, as she didn't think the games or collectibles had any value. Fast forward into the present day, I was thinking about this when I asked his mother if she had any other Pokemon stuff. She ended up bringing out the mother load. We opened all of the boxes she had me bring down. Within the boxes there was the beloved collection of Pokemon games, all very well preserved, as well as several Nintendo consoles, hundreds of games, 24 binders full of Pokemon cards, and there was also a box of many Lego sets with the original boxes and everything, with many old Star Wars sets. When I saw Django Fett I knew I struck gold. I told her that I liked old Legos as well, and asked her how much for the 5 boxes of games, cards, and Lego sets, and she thought for a second and said $100 a box, or $400 for all 5. I told her I would take it all and hauled ass to get to an ATM. I loaded the 5 boxes into my dad's truck and immediately drove home. I knew there was potentially tens of thousands of dollars of goods here. This was the score of a lifetime and I finally felt vindicated for the $40 Derek had taken from me all those years ago. I ended up giving all the stuff to my uncle, who's a hobbyist eBay reseller. He offered to sell it all. He was willing to go through the effort and sell everything individually, and despite my insistence he said he wouldn't take more than a 10% cut of the profits after all fees and taxes. We went through and logged every single item along with the estimated value, and the total of the whole lot was about $40,000. 40,000 was a poetic number since this was 1,000x the value of what Derek stole from me all those years ago. My uncle sold most of the lot before the end of the summer and ended up writing me a check. Though it was considerably less than $40,000, it was still a life-changing amount of money for me. I was able to pay off my remaining student loans and put the rest towards a down payment on a new car. Story 3. Park and take up 4 spots? Hope you didn't have to go anywhere soon. I went to the mall for a small errand and obviously it's the weekend so parking was scarce. As I'm on the search I see 2 spots pretty close so I assume it's my lucky day, but as I get there I see that a pickup has managed to take up 4 spots at once. If I had been in my work truck I would have just moved on, but I happen to be in my super compact clown car that gets incredible gas mileage and will easily fit into what's left of a space behind this truck. I park and go in to do my thing, and as I walk out I can see the owner walking around frustrated, and getting closer I can see why. Another tiny car had pulled up and upgraded my PettyRevenge and blocked the truck in from pulling out forward. I chuckle as I put away my one item. But as I start to get in my car the guy throws his hands up at me and shakes his head calling me a freaking trash hole like it was my fault he's in this situation. Just then I realize I haven't had lunch yet, and even though the food court lines are crazy long, a pretzel would really hit the spot. So I lock my car back up and start walking back inside. At a distance I see the guy get back out because he realized I left and start to look around to try and measure if he can shimmy his truck out. I order, eat, and take my time responding to a few texts and emails. But I quickly get bored and set out to leave 6 to 10 minutes later. I see my new best friend still there, resigned to his fate. This time no eye contact is made, but I can see him watching me through the corners of his eyes and in the mirrors as he reverses almost in sync with me, and we both get on with our day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel.